Stop trying to pick a lane. By trying to pick a lane, you are shrinking yourself. You are capable of a lot more than what your brain is telling you that you're capable of. Aries season revealed to you the things that you are afraid of. And when we let our fears control us, when we let our fears consume us, that is how we become stuck. That is how we become smaller. We are officially moved into Taurus season. Mercury is in Taurus, and we are approaching a new moon in Taurus. Right now, I want you to think about the present moment. Every present moment, whatever that looks like, I want you to look around at the things that are happening. And I want you to say, this is what I'm choosing. If you do not like what you are choosing, then it's time for you to shift. It's time for you to pivot. Because what Taurus energy shows us is that discipline and practice is what actual freedom is. When we have discipline, when we have practice, when we have rhythm, when we have structure, that is freedom. When we're making choices that align with our desires, that is how we create these beautiful versions of ourselves. And what I want you to understand is that you can have multiple versions of you existing at the same time, including the version of you that you are becoming, right? Allow yourself to be multidisciplinary, because we also have a lot of Gemini energy in the sky. Venus is in Gemini. We're going to have Gemini season begin later this month. Uranus has recently entered Gemini. And later this month, we're also going to have Mercury enter Gemini. I want you to stop trying to make sense. Stop trying to make sense. Stop trying to box yourself in. Because that's what's familiar. Because that's really the only kind of one of the weaknesses of Taurus, is that Taurus will choose what's familiar over and over and over again. And so what's really important to keep in mind for the rest of this month, especially leading up to the new moon in Taurus, is that just because it's unfamiliar doesn't mean it's bad for you. And your brain will tell you and will look at certain risks and will look at certain challenges and be like, oh, that's uncomfortable, so it's dangerous, right? When you begin proving to yourself in a healthy, safe, controlled way that you actually can do this, that, and the third, when you can prove to yourself that you don't have to play it safe to be okay, right? That is how you expand. You don't have to be less, right? You can have more. You know what I mean? And having more requires for you to be more. Okay? So as we move through this month, I really want you to think about how to expand upon your range. Because there's an area of life right now where you have been boxing yourself in, where you've been limiting yourself. And I think what happens is we can overly adapt to situations because we're afraid to say no to people. We're afraid to disappoint people, right? And we keep ourselves stuck in these small places because we think that's what we're supposed to do. And we're waiting to be ready for the more stuff. Like, we know we have all this potential, but we're going to wait until we get the sign. We're going to wait until we feel 100% ready. And the reality is that there is never going to be there's not ever going to be a perfect time. There's not going to be a perfect sense of readiness. That is just your way of delaying the inevitable, right? It's up for grabs for whoever has the audacity and the courage to take it. And they might not even have the same credentials that you have. They might not even be as experienced as you are. However, they had the audacity to, in front of everyone else, go up and fucking take it for themselves, right? But you decided to stay over there because that's what's familiar, that's what's safe, that's what you're good at, and you're putting your head down and you're doing what you're supposed to do. And sometimes we have to have the bravery and the courageousness to just start making our own rules And facing those discomforts head on is really a part of the journey of becoming something greater, right? Is facing those discomforts. And so this can be really the thing about Taurus that is in Taurus energy in general that is a little bit hard to crack, is we have the desire to just settle in, to just get comfortable. But right now we're not really settling in. I mean, Uranus has left Taurus. This is really the first Taurus season that we've had in several years without Uranus present. But Uranus has just entered Gemini, right? And so we're also going to be ending this month with a full moon in Sagittarius on the 31st. So Aries season was so concentrated because we had so many planets in Aries, and it really created this knot that we are now having to untangle moving through Taurus season, approaching this new moon in Taurus. And this new moon is really going to reveal what has crystallized inside of you, because as you peel back your own layers, okay, you realize as you go how dense each layer begins to get. And sometimes when you're even clearing a virus, it actually gets worse before it can get better, right? And so I think that this Aries season almost functioned like an antidote. It was like a pure concentrated Aries energy that we just had to throw back. And I think at first it felt like we were, it was like poison or something. But in reality, it was actually a very purifying and cleansing energy that allowed us to kind of like completely reset and start at zero. And I think a lot of us came out of it. I think the gift of Aries season was realizing that we're stronger than we give ourselves credit for. And I think this mostly impacted the cardinal signs, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer. But your Aries house specifically is, I think, where you are being given the gift of more strength, more audacity, more courage. And that can take you very fucking far, kid. Seriously, okay? Because when you are willing to stop feeling so much, and not that your feelings aren't important, right? But when you're feeling and feeling and feeling and feeling instead of doing and doing and doing and doing, you can't learn. When you're all up in here, you can't learn. You can't. There's only so much that you can do. You have to learn from doing. Okay. And so this new moon in Taurus is where you're realizing, okay, what has crystallized within me? What are the things that I'm carrying and putting into everything else? When you really examine the glue that is holding these different versions of you together, that is how you expand. When you really explore what bridges all of these gaps and think about, okay, like, what are those things? Like, that's when you can really decide to break away from your own patterns, because you're like, this is what I've been repeating. Because for this first half of May, the Taurus Scorpio axis is very activated, because we just came off of the Scorpio full moon and we're building up towards the Taurus new moon. And with Taurus Scorpio energy, it's obviously very cyclical. Nature is very cyclical. And as we shed one layer and we go to the next, the layers begin to get more dense. As we go through the spiral gets tighter and tighter and tighter until we finally get to the core. And so you may find as you're shedding these layers right now that one layer is reminding you of the other layer that you thought you just shed. Because sometimes when you're purging a virus, it has to get worse before it gets better. And so we are really having to understand that we have to build patience with ourselves, right? Patience with untangling the knot that Aries season kind of created. When you notice certain patterns being recycled, it's because you haven't fully cleared that pattern. So really observe the glue that holds all these different things together, because that is going to be showing you what your patterns are, what your dominant story that you were telling yourself. What does the voice in your head sound like? Does it sound like your parents telling you what you should and should not be afraid of, right? Sometimes you have to prove to yourself in real time that you are capable of more. In a safe, controlled environment, of course, do things that scare you. That is how you build resilience. That's also how you build discipline. That is how you expand. To fully release yourself from the shackles, you have to have unshakable self-trust, and faith in self.